What's going on? What's up? What's up? What's up? So today I'm basically going to continue reading the transcripts. I'm not sure exactly what transcripts I have, but at this point in the transcript reading that I've done, we see that Demetris Smith was testifying, and then we were getting into the point where Jane Doe number 5 was beginning to testify. A lot of people are saying that Jane Doe number 5 is Azrielclary. I myself, I have no evidence. I have no proof of that. But people are saying that, you can put 1 and 2 together and you can figure out is Azrielclary. Now, I guess we'll just have to see what the reading of this transcript basically reveals, whether or not it gives us any hints as to who exactly it is. So we're going to get into that for a second. But before we do, I just want to say that most of the stuff that I've read so far, I'm finding that it's not being portrayed in the media, meaning that, the media is actually portraying a totally different story than what I'm reading in the actual transcripts. What I'm reading in the transcripts indicates that R. Kelly is actually, his defense team is actually doing a good job at kind of beating the government in their game of trying to prove that he was involved in a lot of these alleged crimes, and his defense team is beating the government, in my opinion, and basically trying to prove that R. Kelly is a part of a criminal enterprise. I'm not seeing that, right? So case in point, when we read over the transcripts. Tori Love, what's going on? When we read over the transcripts concerning Demetris Smith, a lot of stuff that we read in those transcripts, in my personal opinion, basically hurts the government's case. And basically, it shows that the government is basically just trying to make something out of nothing, basically. So we're basically just going to go ahead and we are going to continue on with the reading of the transcripts. I think I was on page 768. So we're going to continue from that point. Give me 1 second here. We're going to continue from that point, and I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here 1 second. Okay. All right, there we go. So you should see the screen now. And again, we're on 768 where we left off. So we're just going to continue on from here. And of course, Tori, I see Felicia Brown is there. Felicia, Tori, if you guys want to join, you're welcome to do so. Let me see if I can get you the StreamYard link. Where is it hiding? I forget where these things are. Where is this thing hiding? I always forget. Excuse me, a little fatigued here. I always forget where the link is. Actually, where is this link? Share, mic, mute. Oh, it's right here. So if you want to join and speak your piece, you're welcome to do so. Feel free to hop on. There's a StreamYard link, or of course you can just continue in comment in the comment section. So, okay, so let's just go ahead and get into it. So we left off on page 768. I'm going to go ahead and try to enlarge this. Do you personally know that individual? I do. Who is that? That is Robert Kelly, the defendant. Do you see him in the courtroom today? I do not. And this is at the point where Jane has basically come in, and she's beginning to testify. Then the court, can you take a closer look? Do you see him? And at this point, she is supposed to be trying to testify and she can't identify R. Kelly in the courtroom, right? And then the witness, no, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses, but it's still possible for the defendant to stand up. And then the court, could the defendant remove? And then Mr. Canick, no. And then the court, he can't remove his mask. Yes, I see the defendant. Can you point to him and describe an article of his clothing? He has a suit on. The court, what color shirt does he have on? The witness, a black suit. The court, all right, indicating the defendant. How old were you when you met the defendant? I was 17 years old. What year was that? That was 2015. And then it goes on. Have you had sexual contact with the defendant? I have. When did you first have sexual contact with the defendant? When I was 17 years old. And then you continue to have sexual contact with him for a period of time? I did. And then it goes on. How long were you with the defendant? For 5 years. I want to direct your attention to April 18th of 2015. Do you remember that day? I do. Where, if any, where did you go to? I'm sorry here. Where, if any, where did you go to evening? I went to a festival with my parents. Who was the headliner at the festival? The defendant. And was he performing under the name R. Kelly? He was. In what city was the concert? It was in Orlando, Florida. So I guess this is kind of confirming what a lot of people were saying. Basically, they said that Azriel was in Florida at the time, and that's where she met R. Kelly. That's what people are saying, right? Did you live in Orlando, Florida then? I did. The court, can you keep your voice up? I want just to make sure that you are speaking into the microphone. The witness, sorry, that's okay. I did. And how old were you at the time of that concert? I was 17. When is your birthday? December 30th, 1997. In April 2015, when you were with the defendant, were you still in high school? I was. What year were you? I was a junior in high school. And what was the name of the high school that you then attended? Freedom High School. And that was in Orlando? Yes. Do you remember in what section you were seated at the festival when you first saw the defendant? I was in the C section. And if anything, and what, if anything, happened? Mr. Canick, basically, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that section. The court, what section were you in? The witness, A or C section. So now she switched it up. She said she was in the C section first, and now she's saying she was in the A or C section, right? And and then it, A or C section. And then A or C section, they asked, and she goes, yes. What, if anything happened while you were in the C section? There were people from his entourage who were giving out wristbands. And did you receive one of those wristbands? I did. And what did the wristband allow you to do? No, the wristband allowed you to go to the pit and also to meet and greet after the show. And did you then go to the pit? I did. And where was the pit located in connection with the stage? It was in front of the A section, directly in front where the talent would have performed, the defendant. And by talent, you're referring to the defendant. Yes, I am. And what, if anything, did you go to? I'm messing this up. What, if anything, did you then go to the pit? That just reads funny. I did, yes. What, if anything, did you notice about the defendant while you were in the pit? He performed majority of his songs to me, and he did show me a lot of attention. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government's Exhibit 248A. Do you recognize 248A? I do. What is that? This is a picture of the defendant grabbing my hand. Mrs. Geddes, Government offers Exhibit 248A. The court, any objection? Was this at the concert you're talking about? The witness, yes, ma'am. Mr. Canick, yes, Your Honor, I do object. The court, overruled. May we publish? The court, yes. Exhibit published. Whose hand is that? Whose hand is this right here, indicating? That is my hand with 2 wristbands. And were those the wristbands that you received from a member of the defendant's entourage that allowed you to go into the pit? Mr. Canick, objection to the leading, right? The court, overruled. And whose hand is this right here, indicating where my pen is pointing? That is defendant. That was defendants. Now, did the defendant stay on stage continuously during that show? He did not. What happened? I believe he had breaks, and there was also another point of the show where he performed on another stage. During that show, what, if any, additional contact did you have with other associates of the defendant? When he performed with his second set at the stage that was further in the middle of the crowd, someone from his entourage did come to me, and they gave me a sheet of paper and said, "Don't tell anyone." Did you take a look at this sheet of paper? I did. What was on the sheet of paper? It was the defendant's name and phone number. What was listed when you said the defendant's name? What did it say? It said Rob, and it had a number. Do you remember the telephone number that was written on that piece of paper? I do. What was it? It was 312-925-0880. I'm pretty sure that's not his number anymore. At least I hope so. What happened after the defendant finished performing at the show? After the show, it was a meet and greet. However, I was dressed. I wasn't dressed up for the show, so I did not go to the meet and greet. I found my parents after, and I'm showing the witness only what's been marked in the identification as a government exhibit 245A. Do you recognize what's shown in 245A? I do. What is shown in 245A? It's a picture of me with a pair of black panties. And when was this photograph taken? This was the initial date. This was the initial date in April at the same show. Who took the photo? I took the photo. Mrs. Geddes, the government offers 245A. Any objection? Mr. Koenig, none. All right. Excuse me. All right. That's in evidence. And you can publish it. Government exhibit 245A was received in evidence. And does this photo reflect what you were wearing to the concert that evening? It does. And you testified that you're holding a pair of black panties. Where did you receive those from? The defendant. When did you receive those? He gave them to me while performing. And was the defendant performing as part of the tour? He was. Do you know the name of the tour that the defendant was performing? It was his Black Panties tour. Now, you testified that during the show, you were given a piece of paper with the defendant's name and telephone number on it. What, if anything, did you do with that piece of paper? I gave the paper to my mom. And what, if anything, did you do with the phone number on that piece of paper? I did text a number. Did you receive a response from the defendant? Initially, no, because I hadn't entered the proper number. You later learned that you had entered an incorrect number. Yes. I want to step back for a moment. You testified that you were in high school at the time in your junior year. What was your interest in high school? Music, and I did a lot of sports. What, if any, music related after school activities did you participate in? I was taking 3 choir classes at the time, and I was a part of a Patriot Singers, which was basically a group of best singers, and you had to audition to be a part of it. And it was a very, very selected. And that is something that I took after school. It was mandatory. How many days a week did the Patriot Singers meet? Monday through Friday, every day. Every single day, yes. And did you also make any music? Did you take any music-related courses in high school? I did, yes. What type of courses did you take? I took varsity, and I also took a class called, I don't actually remember the specific name, but it was a class dedicated to a small group of students who were working to get scholarships for performance. And at that time, had you earned any money singing? I had. How had you earned money? Outside of my school, I was a performer, and I did shows, and I would write music. So I would get gigs. And were you paid for those gigs? I was. What type of music did you want to pursue back then? R&B. And what type of music did the defendant perform? R&B. You also testified that one of your interests in high school was sports. What type of sports did you participate in? I participated in track and weightlifting. I wanted to turn back to when one of the defendant's associates gave you the defendant's phone number. Were you then interested in the defendants romantically? I was not. You testified, though, that you did try to contact him by sending him a text message. I did. Why did you try to reach out to the defendant? Because he was a musician as well, and I felt that any critique would be good critique. Okay, so I'm just going to stop this right here, and then I'm going to go to the chat. All right, so I get it. I get that you're a musician, right? I get that you're taking music in high school, you're singing in high school, so on and so forth. But you've come to a Black Panties tour. He hands you a pair of black panties, right? And your parents are there. Your parents are there with you, right? I'm just making an observation here. You come to a Black Panty tour, which is an adult venue, right? They're not talking about, kiddie stuff here. And R. Kelly's not singing kiddie stuff. I don't remember specifically what songs was in the Black Panty tour, but I highly doubt, they were singing kiddie songs, right? So he gives you a pair of black panties, and then he gives you his phone number. He gives you his phone number and his name on a piece of paper, and have his people tell you not to tell anybody. And now you're basically saying that you only reached back to him because you were only interested in his critique in terms of music. I'm sorry. I mean, I just don't buy that. I mean, because you have to know that if a person gives you a pair of black panties and their phone number, that they're not interested in no damn music, right? They're not interested in hearing you sing, right? You have to know that, right? But I get it. She wants to evolve her career. She wants to advance her career. So her line of thinking, I don't know what her line of thinking is, but it's like, this person just hit on me. I'm going to try to make a business deal. So it's like you're trying to take advantage of the fact that somebody is romantically interested in you and you just want to do business. To me, this just really doesn't make that much sense. I can see if you maybe contacted R. Kelly through a different way, like maybe your agent contacted his production company and said, "Hey, we want to do a song together. We want to do some music, so on and so forth." Or they contact R. Kelly and they say, "Well, hey, we have this rising young star, and basically we want to set this star up so that she can do a duet with you, so she can be on your team, so she can showcase her talents." That I get, but this I don't get. You're basically engaging him through a romantic setting, right? You're coming to the concert. He's at the concert. He's performed. He gives you the pair of black panties, and he has someone give you his phone number and says, "Don't tell anybody." That's a romantic encounter. That's not a business deal. That's a romantic encounter. So I just don't buy this. I just don't buy it, So let me just turn to the chat and see what people are saying. So SW, is this the right time? Free R. Kelly. Free R. Kelly. SW, I'm in New York now. I thought there would be more people supporting him outside, shaking my head. How many people are actually out there supporting R. Kelly? I know that what's his name? I forget his name. Big Daddy Lolo was trying to, get a group out there to support R. Kelly. How many people are actually showing up at these rallies? And then Diane Lett. Hello, everyone. Hey, Diane. And then Felicia Brown. You ain't lying. And that's what's, I'm sorry. You ain't lying. And what is worse in Chicago, Detroit, from the beginning of this, when the documentary was announced to be aired in Chicago, shouldn't even be in the streets. That's let me further know set. Yeah, so for me, none of this makes any sense. I just think that you're trying to do a business deal. It's kind of like trying to do a business deal by going to meet someone you want to do business with in a strip club or in a setting like that. It just doesn't make any sense. Business deals are for boardrooms and, places like that. It's not for, black panty tours, right? So anyway, it goes on. How did you eventually get in touch with the defendant? I eventually had FaceTime with him because I didn't know if it was necessary just for someone from his entourage who was trying to take advantage of me. And when I did FaceTime him, it was, in fact, him. Now, at the time, when you FaceTime him, and just for the record, can you explain what you mean by FaceTime? FaceTime is a visual phone. Okay, so was it a way for you to see the caller that you're talking to? Yes. Now, at the time, and when you first FaceTime him with the defendant, did you learn whether or not either of your parents, if any, had any contact with the defendant? At the time, I did not. However, were you able to get the defendant's phone number? Well, when I realized that I didn't have the right number, I did happen to be on my mom's phone for something, and I did see that she had been texting the defendant. All right. So did you learn that your mom had, in fact, been communicating with the defendant by text message? I did. And did you have a chance to look at some of those text messages? Oh, this just sounds crazy. I did. Who was the defendant? Who was your mom purporting to be when she was communicating with the defendant? My mother was acting as me. Oh my freaking God. Are you serious? Are you freaking serious? Now you said that you eventually, I'm sorry. Now you said that you did. Damn, I can't even read right now. Now you said that you did eventually start communicating with the defendant. I think you testified that you FaceTime him. Yes. So what was her mom saying? I'm pretty sure the defense is going to chew this up, because I'm wondering what was her mom saying when she was texting, pretending to be the daughter. Now you said that you eventually started communicating with the defendant. I think you testified that you FaceTime him. Yes. Do you recall what telephone you were using to communicate with the defendant? I was using an iPod that I had gifted to. I'm sorry. I was using an iPod that I had gifted to my mother because at the time I had an Android. And did the iPod allow you to do FaceTiming? It did. And did you use another telephone to also text message and communicate with the defendant? I did. What phone is that? That is a phone that I had at 17 years old. It was an Android. Mrs. Geddes, I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 233. May I approach, Your Honor? The court, yes. Counsel approaches the witness. Do you recognize the Government Exhibit 233? I do. What is it? It is my phone from high school. And is that the phone that you were using to communicate with the defendant or one of the phones you were using? It was. Mrs. Geddes' Government Exhibit offers 233. No objection. All right. That's in evidence. Government Exhibit 233 was received in evidence. Now, before you met with the government or first met with the government, when did you at least see that phone that's in the evidence in Government Exhibit 233? The last time I saw that phone was in Florida before I left my family. Okay. Do you remember when that was? It was probably June or July of what year? 2015. And did you use the phone after you left in Florida with your family? I did not. The court, just wait until the lawyer finishes asking the questions before you answer. That's what's easier for the court reporter, okay? That's all right. Go ahead. You said that you saw some of the messages that your mom had been exchanging with the defendant. What did you understand at the time that your mom had told the defendant when he was communicating with I'm sorry, I got to read this again. What did you understand at the time that your mom had told the defendant when she was communicating with him by acting as? To my knowledge, she did tell him that I was a musician and that I was an artist, and she did send him videos of me on YouTube of me performing live. And when you started to communicate with the defendant, what, if anything, did you and the defendant discuss over the phone and in text messages? Initially, he said, I did tell him that I was a musician, and he said that I could come to the audition. What, if anything, did you tell the defendant about your age? I told the defendant I was 18. Were you in fact 17? I was. So this is the part where everyone is saying that she basically lied about her age. So it's like, this whole thing is crazy because you're trying to nail him for sleeping, with underage girls. But on the same token, these people are lying about their age. So it's like, how can you nail a person over something like that? And then you look at the fact that there's an age difference of 1 year is so trivial. I don't even see how they're actually trying to pursue this case, because it's just 100% nonsense to me. You mentioned that the defendant told you that you could audition. Is that correct? Uh-huh. That is correct. Uh, did you arrange, was the place arranged and the time arranged for you to have an audition with the defendant? Yes, it was. Where was that supposed to take place? At the Dolphin Hotel. Where's the Dolphin Hotel? It's a Disney property in Kissimmee. Is that near Orlando where you live? Yes. And whose idea was it to meet at the Dolphin Hotel? It was the defendant's. Where did you next see the defendant? At the Dolphin Hotel. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as government exhibit 518A, E, and G. This is 518A, 518E, and 518G. Do you recognize what's been shown in those three exhibits? I do. What is it? That is a hotel that the defendant had asked me to meet him at. And those fair and accurate photos, I'm sorry, and are those fair and accurate photos of the hotel and how it appeared when you met him there? It is, yes, Mrs. Geddes. The government exhibit, the government exhibits offers for 518A, E, and G. Mr. Koenig, no objection. All right, those are in evidence. Exhibit 518, E, and G were received in evidence. And then it goes on. I'm going to put 518E on the screen now. Do you recall how long it was between the festival where you first saw the defendant and when you went to the Dolphin Hotel for an audition with the defendant? It was possibly a few days. He did say that he usually stayed there after for a few days. And when you saw he, who are you? And when you say he, who are you referring to? The defendant. Do you remember what you did before you went to the Dolphin Hotel that day? I was at school. And where did you go after school? After Patriot Singers, I didn't go to any sports activities. I went to my friend's Malak's house, and I got dressed. Mr. Koenig, can I have that? Can I have that read back? Whose house? Malak. She's a friend of mine that I attended high school with. Okay. Ms. Koenig, could I have the entire answer read? Sure. What was the girl's name? Malak. The court, Malak. Malak. Yes. Go ahead. And I'm probably butchering this this girl's name, but I just see Malak. So I don't know how you guys would pronounce it. So anyway, so yes, go ahead. Thank you. You testified that you were at your friend's house and then you got dressed. Did you then go to the Dolphin Hotel? I did. Who, if anyone, came with you to the Dolphin Hotel? No one. Who, if anyone, knew that you were going to meet the defendant at the hotel that day? My family. Do you remember what you wore and when? I'm saying, do you remember what you wore when you went to meet the defendant that day? Yes, I do. I wore a black kid me heels and a pair of skinny jeans, dark blue, and a crop top that had mesh at the top. Mr. Koenig, I'm sorry, I didn't get the top. The court, it had a mesh on the top. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Geddes, I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification 247A for the witness only. Do you recognize what's shown in 247A? I do. What is that? This is me prior to meeting the defendant. And who took the photograph? I took the picture. And did you take the picture that you were going to? I'm sorry. And did you take it the day that you were going to the Dolphin Hotel to meet the defendant? I did. Mrs. Geddes, government offers 247A, no objection. Okay, that's in evidence. And it goes on. Now you testified you went to the Dolphin Hotel to meet the defendant. Where did you first see him at the Dolphin Hotel? When I drove there, he told me that it would be a black Sprinter out in front of the hotel and to get inside. Did you see the black Sprinter when you arrived? I did. When you say black Sprinter, what are you referring to? A Mercedes-Benz black Sprinter van. And who, if anyone, did you get then? And who, if anyone, did you then go inside the Sprinter? I did. Who, if anyone, was inside the Sprinter when you went there? The defendant. Anyone else that you saw? No. Was the Sprinter van parked? It was parked in front of the hotel. It was parked in the parking lot or in another location. No. It was parked directly in a roundabout in front of the Dolphin Street Hotel. Yes. What happened when you went inside the Sprinter? When I got inside the Sprinter, me and the defendant talked. Do you remember what you talked about that day? We, of course, talked about me auditioning, and he had asked me a few questions. Do you remember what he asked you? Yes. What did he ask you? He asked me to sit on his lap. How did you respond when the defendant asked you to sit on his lap? I asked him if he was sure. What did the defendant say? He said his, and then period. Did you then sit on his defendant's lap? I did. What else, if anything, did you ask? What, if anything, did he ask you when you were inside the Sprinter? He didn't ask me for a kiss. How did you respond to that? I didn't necessarily want to. And so he said just a small pop kiss. So I'm sorry. This is just too crazy. This is just too crazy because you have to understand this is not about an audition at this point. First, you have her parents texting R. Kelly back and forth. God only knows what's actually being said between R. Kelly and the parents. Actually, I wonder if the defense team actually subpoenaed the parents, because I would actually subpoena them, especially if there was, some talk about, romance between the mom posing as a daughter and texting to R. Kelly. I would wonder what she actually said. And again, so you meet this guy in a romantic circumstance, and now you tell him that, you want to basically be a singer, but you have to understand this whole setting, meeting at a hotel by yourself. The parents have to know. The parents are basically sending their child off to meet R. Kelly at a hotel by herself. They have to know this is not about business. This is romance. No parent in their right freaking mind is going to send their child off to a hotel by themselves, in hopes that they're going to get some type of business deal. None of this makes sense. Then it goes on. Now you use the term pop kiss. Was that your word or his word? His word. What did you do? I did kiss. I said, "Are you sure?" And what happened? And then he said yes. And then I gave him a pop kiss. Now, what do you mean a pop kiss? Meaning that in his terms, it didn't need to have any tongue. It was just a innocent pop kiss. Approximately how long did you stay in the Sprinter with the defendant? Not long, probably about 5 to 7 minutes. And what, if anything, did you do after you were in the Sprinter? Someone knocked on outside of the door of the Sprinter, and it was time for us to go upstairs. Did you see who knocked on the Sprinter van? I did not, because their back was turned. So what did you do when there was a knock and you were told that it was okay to go upstairs or time to go upstairs? I just followed the defendant up. Where did you go next? To the hotel room. And was the hotel room inside the Dolphin? Yes, it was. Was anyone inside the hotel room when you went? No. You testified a minute ago that someone knocked and said it was time to go. Did you understand that the individual meant by that? Mr. Kenneth, objection. The court overruled. It just meant that the keys were ready and that they could go upstairs. The keys for the hotel room? Yes. What, if anything, happened once you were inside the hotel room at the Dolphins Hotel? When we went upstairs, the defendant took his cigar out of his mouth, and he had expressed to me that before I can an audition, that he needed to come. Oh, this is crazy. And by come, what do you mean? He needed to ejaculate. What, if anything, was the defendant carrying when you went into the hotel room? So I'm not victim bashing. But you guys help me understand what you would do if you went to an alleged audition and before, and when you get to the audition, the person auditioning you says like, yeah, before you can perform, I need to bust a nut first. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Again, you have to know this is not a legitimate audition. You have to understand what this is all about. And again, there was text between the parents and Kells, so we don't know what was said between them. Maybe that'll come out later. I don't know. But to me, this is just nonsense. I don't even see how the government is actually trying to prosecute this man over this nonsense. What, if anything, was the defendant carrying when you went into the hotel room? He had a backpack. And what, if anything, did you bring your phone with you to the Dolphin Hotel? I did, yes. What, if anything, did you do with your phone once you were in the hotel room? When I got upstairs, he told me to turn my phone off because people sometimes try to record him. Did you turn your phone off? I did, yes. You said that the defendant said he needed to ejaculate. How did you respond to that? I was against it. What did you say to him? I told him I did not come to please him and that I was coming for an audition. Okay, this is interesting. What did he say? He continued to persist and he told me I didn't have to do anything, just take off my cloths. How did you respond to that? I then took my cloths off. What happened after that? He then asked me, he persisted to have sex with me and told me, and I told him that I hadn't shaved. I'm sorry, you said he persisted to have sex with you? What do you mean? Like he persisted to continuously try and peer pressure me to have sex with him. And you testified that you said you hadn't shaved. Yes. How did the defendant respond to that? He said, even better. What, if anything else, did you say? I told him he persisted again, and I told him that I was sweaty from sports, even though I hadn't attended sports. And his response to that was that there was a shower in the room. What did you do? I continued to deny and decline. And so he then told me to just walk back and forth and ask if he could give me oral sex. And you said that he asked you to walk back and forth. Uh-huh. And what did you understand the defendant to mean by that? I just thought that that would be better than having sex with him, with the defendant. Mr. Kennick, objection. The court overruled. Did you then walk back and forth for the defendant? I did, yes. What, if anything, were you wearing at the time? I just had on panties and a bra that I had on. And you mentioned that the defendant also asked you about oral sex. He did. Do you remember the words, in effect, that the defendant used? Yes. What did he say? After that, he said, before I could sing, that he needed to come again and that if I couldn't have sex with him, to at least just let him lick my butt. Oh, man, this is crazy. And what, if anything, did he promise in return? To allow me to audition and to take care of me for life. So here's the thing. Here is the thing. This is kind of crazy because in another video I talked about how she could possibly, like, in a, I'm not saying that R. Kelly is going to be convicted, but in the chance that he does, there's something called a post-conviction proceeding. And in the post-conviction proceeding, a third party can then come in and say, well, hey, before you take all of his money, you need to know that some of that money belongs to me because we had a contract. And to me, this kind of looks like a contract, because on one hand, it's seen as prostitution. It could be seen as prostitution. On another hand, maybe not, because when a person typically promises to take care of you for life, that's typically marriage, right? That's typically a long-term relationship. So she could potentially, like, if there's a chance that R. Kelly could lose, she could potentially show up at the post-conviction proceeding and say, well, hey, you can't take all of his money if he have any money left. I don't know that he has any money left. People are saying that he doesn't have any left. But I can see a circumstance where he could still have access to, some royalties, and she could potentially come in and basically get some of that money based off of this allegation. Right now, it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. And again, I'm not saying he's going to be convicted, and I don't know what's going to happen in this trial. All I can say is that a lot of this stuff is crazy and it shouldn't have never gone to trial. And I hope that the jurors see this stuff for nonsense, because that's all it really is, right? You have a situation where this young lady goes to his Black Panties tour, an adult venue, and he gives her a pair of black panties, and his phone number. Now, he's not giving her black pennies and his phone number because he thinks she's a fabulous singer. He's giving that to her because he's romantically interested. Now she is pursuing him for an audition. So right off the bat, you have to acknowledge that there's conflicting interest, because on one hand, R. Kelly is just romantically interested. And then on the other hand, this young lady is interested in a singing career, right? So we just have to just take it for what it is. R. Kelly didn't come to her, she came to him. And, he has this romantic interest. So right away, there's a conflict of interest right off the bat, right? So she, knowing that R. Kelly was romantically interested in her, knowing that that's how they establish their communication, a professional would say, you know what? This man is trying to get in my panties. I'm trying to get my career on. I'm just going to not even talk to this guy, and I'm just going to move on and pursue other opportunities, right? To me, that's a professional way to handle something like that. But, of course, her parents knows about all this, and they continue to proceed. I just don't see how any of this has even made it to court, because it's just silly, right? Anyway, so let me just move on. He said that if you agree to that he would take care of you for the rest of your life, or for life. Yes, he did. What did you say? I didn't necessarily care for that. I just wanted to sing. So what happened after that? After that, he then laid down, and I got on top of him. See, and this is just straight up bullshit. I'm sorry. He tells you that he's going to take care of you for the rest of your life, and you say you don't care for it. Well, if you don't care for it, why don't you just walk out of the room, right? Instead, what did she do? After that, he then laid down, and I got on top of him backwards, and he licked my butt. And he had his backpack beside him, and a few iPads that he had taken out. You mentioned that the defendant has some iPads. What, if any, did you notice about the iPads then? I didn't notice anything because I was backwards, so I couldn't necessarily see that was visible on them. What was visible on them? And then it goes on, but you saw the defendant remove an iPad or two. Yes, I did. What happened next? There was a knock on the door. What, if anything, did the defendant do when he heard the knock on the door? He got up and he went to the door, and he saw that it was officers at the door, and then told me to go to the washroom and put my clothes on. He asked me if I was 18, and I said yes. What was the defendant's demeanor when he saw the officers at the door, at the hotel room door? He was very anxious and scared. Mr. Kennick, objection. Court overruled. What led you to the conclusion that he was anxious and scared? The witness, because after he looked through the peephole, he made me go into the restroom immediately and told me to get dressed. And he said, "Are you 18?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Don't lie to me." And I said, "Yes." The next question, did you then go to the restroom and get dressed? I did, yes. And then what did the defendant do? He opened the door and he spoke to them, and he was more relaxed. And what, if anything, did you do when the officers were at the door and speaking with the defendant? Once I came out of the restroom, I then saw them and they had spoken to me and said that they had been looking for me because my parents could not get in touch with me. How did you? This is some nonsense. So they sent police after this dude? Are you serious? How did you respond? So they basically tried to entrap him. How did you respond? I told them that I had put my phone in airplane mode, and I said that I was turning on my phone, and I then took a call. I'm sorry, and I then had to call my parents in front of them and let them know that I was okay. I also had to show my ID. And what, if anything, did you say about your age? I did say that I was 18. What, if anything, did the officers say during that encounter? Basically, after they checked my ID, they left and they had given the defendant a card and said anytime he was in Orlando and needed security to let them know. Now you said that you showed the officers your identification, your ID. Did you show them your true identification? Yes, it was my driver's license. And based on your identification, how old were you? How old did it show that you were? 17 years old. Did the officers then leave? They did, yes. What happened after the officers left? The defendant wanted to proceed because he still needed to come. And by come, do you mean ejaculate? Yes, I do. What happened then? We persisted, and then he made me get back on top of him backwards, and then he ejaculated. What happened after the defendant ejaculated? After he ejaculated, I was able to put back on my cloths, and he did allow me to sing. What did you sing for the defendant? I sung Mama Knows Best by Jesse White, which was a ballad. How, if at all, did the defendant react after you sang for him? He seemed very pleased, and he said that I had a great voice and that I had a lot of potential. What, if any, future plans did you make with the defendant that evening? He did say that he would like to see me again and teach me a few techniques. You testified earlier that when you saw the defendant perform at the concert in Orlando, he was performing as part of a tour. Did you learn what type of venues the defendant was performing at as part of that tour? Yes, it was at the stadium shows and a lot of outdoor festivals. And where were those shows? In multiple cities and states throughout the country? Yes. Now, at either the Dolphin Hotel where you first met the defendant or in a few days thereafter, what, if any, plans did you make with the defendant? He had to leave, and that once he left, he told he would want me to come out to the next city that he was in. And did you continue to communicate with him by phone? I did, yes. How? Via text messages and phone calls. After you met with the defendant at the Dolphin Hotel, did you mother this damn thing transcript is so hard to read. But I guess maybe the court report is under a lot of pressure to get this stuff out that, they're not, getting everything grammatically correct, or maybe this is just how they're speaking. Did you mother continue to text the defendant pretending to be you, as far as you know, at least? She did not, no. Now, in a few days after you met the defendant, do you recall sending the defendant a video? I do. What video did you send the defendant? The defendant asked me to send him a video of my singing in my underwear and bra. She has to know he's not interested in you singing. He just wants to see you. She has to know that. And did you do that? I did, yes. What, if any, other videos did you send the defendant? I sent him videos of me dancing, singing, and more videos of me performing. Did you send the defendant any professional videos of you? I did, yes. What did you send him? I sent him my unreleased single that my parents have paid for, and I had asked him for his input and his opinion. What was the name of the unreleased single that you had sent him? The single was called Liar, Liar. And why did you send it to the defendant? Well, it was going to be my first single release, and I had just got back the final edit, and I genuinely wanted his input. And then it goes on. And who had you said perform on that video? Is that correct? What? And who had you said you performed on that video? Is that correct? It was more like a music video. So it was like me and friends from high school. it was shot professionally, and how did the defendant respond to the video after you sent it to him? He liked it. He said that he liked it. He said that he did like it and that it was cute and that it wasn't, too grown or sexy, and that he liked it. Now you said that the defendant proposed seeing you again at another stop on his tour. Is that right? He did, yes. Did the defendant explain to you how you would get to the next stop on his tour bus? I'm sorry, did the defendant explain to you how you would get to the next stop on his tour? Yes. What did he tell you? He had given me a number and told me specifically what to text to that number. And what did he tell you to text to the particular number? He told me to say, Mr. Kelly said to get me to whatever city that he was in at the time. Do you recall the first state that you traveled to see the defendant? I do not. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 233C. Does reviewing 233C refresh your recollection as to where you first traveled to see the defendant? It does, yes. What state did you travel to? I traveled to California. And what city in California? Los Angeles. Now, approximately when did you take this trip? I took this trip on the 28th of April. And was that in 2015? Yes. Were you still finishing your junior year in high school when you took this trip? Yes. Yes, I was. Yes. Did you take more trips to see the defendant on this tour? I did. Yes. While you were still in your junior year of high school, generally speaking, what days would you travel to see the defendant? I would usually travel the weekend, but sometimes I would go over and lead into Monday. And would you miss days of school as a result of this? Yes, I would. You testified that the defendant told you to send a text message to someone to arrange travel. Who were you understanding you were sending a text to? It was assistants, an assistant who worked for the defendant. Yes. Did you learn her name? Her name was Cheryl Mack. I'm showing you the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 38. Do you recognize Government Exhibit 38? I do, yes. What is Government Exhibit 38? That was his assistant in 2015. What was her name? Cheryl Mack. The government offers Exhibit 38. Any objection? None. I just don't recall. Did you offer other exhibits as well? I'm about to. Do you object? No. Okay, that's in evidence. And thank you. So what, if any, information did you provide to Cheryl Mack when you first sent her a text message asking to arrange your travel? I said to her the city that I was currently departing from, and I sent her my birth date. And who did you understand would pay for your travel to Los Angeles to see the defendant? The defendant. You testified that you provided your name and your birthday, correct? Yes, I did. Did you provide your true birthday? Yes, I did. Showing that you were 17 years old? Yes, I did. Your Honor, may we publish to the jury May we publish to the jury only Government Exhibit 233C, which is now in evidence? The court, yes. Generally speaking, what is shown in 233C? It is me letting her know what city I'm leaving from, which is Orlando, and then sending her my birthday stating 12/30/1997. Are these text messages that you exchanged with Cheryl Mack? Yes, it is. And what are the dates of these text messages? It was April 28th, 2015. And then it goes on. And what are the dates? I'm sorry. Without reading your name in line 6802, can you read the first line where the pen is pointing, indicating? Yes. Mr. Kelly said to get me to LA in early flight. My name is Jane. I'm in Orlando, Florida currently. And did Cheryl Mack then arrange for you to travel from Orlando, Florida to Los Angeles the following day? Yes, he did. Mrs. Geddes, I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 217. Do you recognize? I do. So again, so this part, and I spoke about this before. They're trying to prove a RICO charge, and they're trying to prove, in order to do that, they have to prove that, number one, R. Kelly had a criminal organization, and that the purpose of that criminal organization was, to get underage girls. But what we're seeing here is that, number one, she lied about her age, right? And then number two, R. Kelly is 100% oblivious to her age at this point. The government is trying to point out that she told the trip planner her age, but we don't know that the trip planner actually told the age to R. Kelly. I guess maybe we'll get to that in a second, right? Or maybe the government somewhere down the line is going to question Cheryl Mack and say, hey, did you tell R. Kelly the age of this young lady? Maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't. But right now, I'm not seeing any culpability on R. Kelly's side, because he doesn't, in his mind, he still knows that she's 18. Even when the cops come in and she hands her ID over to the cops, she hands her ID to the cops, not to R. Kelly. And the cops never bring up the fact that, she's 17. And I think it's kind of trivial to, bring this guy up on a RICO charge anyway, seeing that there's a 1 year age difference, probably really just a couple of months at that point, right? Because, yeah, it's just all trivial. None of this makes any sense at this point. Rodney Williams, he on Black People Time now, laughing out loud. What time did I start this? I thought I was going to start this at 9. I started, I should have said 9 Central Time because I'm in Chicago. So I don't know what happened. So anyway, let me just continue on. Mrs. Geddes or Gates, the government offers 217 if there is no objection. Mr. Koenig, no objection. I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. All right, that's in evidence. Exhibit 217 was received in evidence. May we publish to the jury only? Yes. Mrs. Getz, what is government exhibit 217? It is a flight ticket from Orlando to LA. And is this for flight April 29th of 2015? It is, yes. And is this for yourself? Yes. And was this ticket booked by the defendant's assistant, Cheryl Mack? Yes, it was. I'm waiting to see how they're going to link this back to R. Kelly. Did you see the defendant while you arrived in LA, like during the trip? I did, yes. Now, do you remember where you first saw him during the trip? No. So even if you don't remember where you first saw him, what do you recall seeing him while you were in LA? In a hotel and at his shows? Did you attend his show in LA while you were there? I did, yes. And you said you also saw him at a hotel. Yes. What happened at the hotel room where you saw the defendant? I did. He did express that he wanted to teach me a few techniques. However, he needed to ejaculate again before doing anything. And when you saw that he said that he wanted to teach you a few techniques, what type of techniques did you understand him to refer to? Oh my God, that's too funny. Musical techniques to help me better myself as a singer. Yes, this is some silly shit. I'm sorry, this shit is just too silly. It is just too silly. Look, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. You met the man at a Black Panties tour. He gave you a pair of black panties and his phone numbers. His man is not interested in you singing. He's just not. And I understand that, she's young and she's naive, but her parents can't be that young and naive. They have to know that. They have to know that. Oh, this is just silly. That there's nothing illegal going on here. Again, I think that if she met R. Kelly through a professional channel, like her agent reaching out to R. Kelly's team, right? Or her parents reaching out to R. Kelly's team, not through a Black Panties tour, but legitimately reaching out to her team, signing contracts, and doing business deals. I can see this, but this is not that. This is just R. Kelly just being on some freak shit, and she's going along with it. Plain and simple. He was interested in you from a romantic level, and you basically are trying to get him to flip from being romantic to 100% business. I don't see anything wrong with what's happening here. I really don't. Could he be taking advantage of her? Yeah, possibly. Is it illegal? Hell no, it's not illegal. And there's nothing the Me Too movement can actually say about this because, again, this is, in my personal opinion, he is interested in you from a romantic level. You didn't meet him in the office. You didn't meet him in a recording studio. You met him when he was performing. He gave you a pair of panties and he gave you his phone number. Where do you think you can go from that? How do you think this thing is going to go when you're meeting him in a hotel rooms? You're meeting him, you're meeting him in hotel rooms. If you were seriously trying to convert that encounter to a business professional relationship, then you would be better off saying, well, no, I can't come to your hotel, but I can meet you at this studio and I can perform. Or no, I can't meet you at this hotel, but I'm going to be performing at this location. You can come and see me sing and you can give me your critique. This is not a business deal. I'm sorry, it's not. What happened after he said that? After he said that, we did the same thing and did in fact give me a few techniques. And when you said you did the same thing, what are you referring to? Oral sex. He needed to ejaculate before anything. Did he give you oral sex? Mr. Kennedy, objection. The court overruled. I don't remember. I believe, well, like eating my butt, yes. And you were saying you don't remember where specifically he gave you oral sex on what part of your body. No, I thought you were asking like vaginally, but yes, he did give me oral sex. Mr. Kennedy, Your Honor, may we approach briefly, very briefly? The court, sure. Do you need the court reporter? Hopefully not. The court, well, let's have her come over just in case. Okay. And then they have a sidebar. We don't know what was said between them. Then it goes on. Man, this is a long testimony. Mr. Kennedy, Your Honor, I don't understand. I'm objecting to questions that I think are leading. This is a very crucial witness. I think we should be getting her testimony. The court is overruling those objections. I don't want to continue to object if you're going to overrule them, but I just need to know the rationale. The court, well, my general policy is I don't look back on rulings, but I will surely explain it to you. She said that the same thing happened this time as had happened before, and following up was somewhat leading, but it was based on her answer that was the same thing happened before, which she had described earlier. So while it was technically leading, it was leading in a way that was unfair. That's the basis for my ruling. That it was leading in a way that was unfair. I think she meant to say fair. And I don't, as a practical matter, I don't understand you to be doing this either. It's that every technical violation requires some kind of curative instruction. The witness is pretty much describing things that happen. If there's a real leading going on, I will sustain it, as I think I've done it before. But I think a little bit of leading to move it along when it's already been established what was talked about is not a problem. So that's what I'm doing. Mr. Kennedy, the last question was not the one that I was really bothered in terms of the court's ruling. It was the question before that. I just think that there's some crucial things in terms of the court. What was the topic? I'm old, Judge. I don't remember the topic. Not as old as I am. And I remember the topic. It was describing the nature of the sexual contact, and that's specifically why I didn't sustain the objection, because she said the same thing happened in this instance as happened in Florida. And so that, to me, is not the kind of thing that requires any kind of curative instructions. Mr. Kennedy, I wouldn't want one. All right. So what's the basis for rulings? So why don't we move on? Mr. Geddes. I'm sorry. So, all right. So that's the basis for the ruling. So why don't we move on? Okay. Just one note along this line. The witness was with the defendant for 5 years. I would like to be able to lead, at least in part, so that we're not here until the end of time. Mr. Koenig, just so that we're clear, I don't have any problems with setting time, leading to set time, but it's just when it comes to details. That's fine. I think we're all on the same page. Obviously, what color was the car? What street did you drive? On those kind of things, do not do. Are we going to get through this witness today in terms of your direct, Mr. Geddes? I sure hope so, Mr. Kennett. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. FYJ, what's going on? So we're moving on. Damn, this shit is long. The court. Okay, next question, please. Examination continues. It almost feels like I just want to skip and just get to the cross-examination, but I'm going to try to get through a little bit more of this. I'm not sure how far I can make it. So in 2 days, we haven't gotten through a quarter of this stuff. While you were with the defendant in Los Angeles, what, if anything, else did the defendant describe to you? Pertaining to what? Do you recall the nature of the communication with the defendant while you were with him in Los Angeles, aside from the sexual contact that you just described? Yes. What were they about? Musical conversations. And go ahead. In which he was like telling me, teaching me techniques. And what, if any, guidelines did the defendant describe to you about the time that you might spend with the defendant? I don't understand what you're asking me, Mrs. Geddes. I'd like to show the witness only what's been marked for identification as 233D. Does reading 233D refresh your recollection about other topics that the defendant raised while you were with him in Los Angeles? It does, yes. What do you recall the defendant telling you? He had mentioned rules. And what did you understand? What are you referring to by rules? It was a protocol by which he went by, and the rules that I would have to abide by while in his presence. Wait, if any rules do you recall the defendant telling you? What if any rules do you recall the defendant telling you? Based off this piece of evidence, my wardrobe and how I dress. And what did you understand the defendant to be telling you about your wardrobe? I had worn black tights and a brown shirt, and he did not like that. Mr. Koenig, objection. The court overruled. What makes you say that? Because he had asked me to change, and that was the beginning of the very first rule that he had addressed about me. Mrs. Geddes, what did he want you to change into? Describe the type of clothing that he preferred you to be wearing. Something that was loose and baggy, preferably. What, if any, other rules did you recall the defendant sharing with you on that first trip to California? I don't recall any. While you were in the hotel room that you were staying, was the defendant always with you? No, he was not. What, if anything, did you do when the defendant was not with you in the hotel room? I would just wait in the hotel room. What did you say? Why did you stay in the hotel room? He expressed to me to let him know anytime I did leave or where I was going. What, if anything, did you understand the defendant wanted you to call him? He wanted me to call him daddy. So, I mean, again, if you don't understand what this is at this point, now you do, right? You know, a person telling you to call them daddy is not interested in your singing career. I'm sorry, they're just not really, they aren't. And I mean, that really should have been apparent a long time ago when he basically said he needed to bust a nut, before he listened to you sing. Those are all signs that if you are seriously interested in a music career, that you would basically get out of there, right? But instead, she stayed. And I say that she stayed because she was interested. Even if she wasn't interested in him romantically, she was interested in what being with him or around him could provide, right? So lots of times, I'm pretty sure the people who are watching my videos are adults, and they know that at every time two people hook up, it's not each person. I can't even talk right. When two people hook up, it's not always that they're both romantically interested in each other. Sometimes one person is interested in the other person strictly based off of what they can provide, while the other person may be interested romantically. This is life. This is what happens in this world 24/7. People get married for security. People get married for fame. And some people get married for fortune, right? Not everyone gets married for, love and romance. It just doesn't work that way. So, I mean, it's clear, 100% clear to me at this point. No laws have been broken, not even close. And in fact, is Jane, aka Azriel, who's actually lied about her age. And at this point, I haven't seen where it's revealed that R. Kelly knew that she was a certain age, right? And the other question, where's her parents during all this, right? If her parents are so concerned about the age, where are they, right? When she's flying back and forth, to different states, they have to know that their daughter is flying out of town. You don't not notice that your daughter is missing for 1 or 2 days. I mean, she was missing for all of a couple of hours and you sent the police out to a hotel room. You knew exactly where to send the police to, right? So now your daughter is missing for days, right? And you don't send the police out? Come on. The government showing the witness, again, what's been marked for identification as 233D, which you were just previously looking at, Mrs. Geddes. Do you recognize what this is? Yes, I do. Generally, what is it? This is a conversation between me and my mother. And what is the date of conversation? April 29th, 2015. Okay, this is going to be interesting. And generally speaking, what are you guys talking about? I'm telling her that he is talking about rules and that he told me to change. The government offers 233D. Any objections? No. Okay, what will be in the evidence? Exhibit 233 was received. All right. All right. Where my pen is indicating, is that where you were telling your mom that the defendant was talking about rules? Yes. I'm showing the witness only what has been marked as identification 233E. Do you recognize what's shown as 233E? I do, yes. Generally speaking, what are those? This is a conversation between me and my mother, and what is the date? Oh, shit. What did I do here? I think I'm just going to read because I think I got turned around somehow. What is the date of the conversation? April 29th, 2015. And are these text messages between you and your mother? Yes, they are. And what are you discussing with your mother in those text communications? I'm expressing to her that he has me in sweats. Mrs. Geddes, the government offers 233. One question. Who are you referring to when you say he has you in sweats? The defendant. The government offers 233E. Any objection? No. Okay, that's in evidence. Then it goes on. May we publish? Yes. And can you read the text message where my pen is pointing? Yes, but he got me in sweats. And who wrote that text message? I sent the text message to my mother. So her mother knows. Her mother at this point knows. I mean, in my opinion, she knew long ago what was going on. But now she definitely knows because he's dressing her daughter. About the defendant, yes. And now can you read the message at the bottom? He ain't like my tights showing my figure. And again, who are you referring to? The defendant. Do you recall what, if anything, the defendant told you about the value of your trip to Los Angeles? No. Mrs. Geddes, I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as 233F. Mrs. Geddes, generally, what's shown in 233F? It is basically me texting my mother about a conversation that I had with the defendant. And what is the date of the text message sent to you, to your mom? May 1st, 2015. Mrs. Geddes, the government offers 233F. Mr. Kennick, no objection. All right, the evidence is in. Can you just read the text message at the bottom, please? He just texted me. He said, although he isn't with me, this was a wasted trip, waste of a trip. He said I should take this time to try and ease my mind and soak in everything he's been telling me. So when I actually go into this industry, I'll have a mature frame already. And he's in that text messages. Who are you referring to? The defendant. And when you reference this industry, what industry are you referring to? The music industry. And finally, when you said, although he isn't with me, this wasn't a wasted trip. What trip are you referring to? Me going to LA. Now, you initially flew to Los Angeles. Did you stay in Los Angeles, or did you visit another city during that trip? I ended up getting stuck out there and going to multiple cities with the defendant. How did you travel from city to city with the defendant? He had his assistant book flights and the entire itinerary. Do you know how the defendant traveled between cities? He did express that he did not fly because of his fear and that he traveled by tour bus. Do you remember where you went after Los Angeles? I do not, Mrs. Geddes. I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification as 233Q. Man, where's all this going? Because I'm not seeing the purpose of all this testimony. I wish I could just kind of skip through all this, but I'm afraid I missed something. Do you recognize 233Q? I do, yes. What is shown there? It's a conversation between me and his assistant, Cheryl, and I'm telling her exactly what the defendant told me to say, which is what? That Mr. Kelly said to get me to Stockton, California. And what is the date? Are those text messages between you and Cheryl, Matt? Yes. And what are the dates of those text messages? May 1st, 2015. Mrs. Geddes, the government offers 233Q. The court, any objections? I object to this senseless line of questioning. All right. That's in evidence. After receiving 233Q, do you recall where you went after Los Angeles? To Stockton, California. And who made those travel reservations for you? His assistant, Cheryl. Now, do you remember where you stayed in Stockton? I do not. Mrs. Geddes, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification 233R. What is 233R? It is Cheryl sending me my itinerary of where I would be staying. In Stockton, California. Yes. Mrs. Geddes, the government offers 233R. The court, any objection? No. That's in evidence. Government Exhibit 233R was received in evidence. Where were you going to be staying? In Stockton? At the Residence Inn. Now, do you remember what you did once you arrived in Stockton, California? I do not. Why were you in Stockton, California? I was there to see the defendant for a show that he had. And did you go to the show in Stockton, California? I did, yes. I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 220. The witness only. Do you remember 220? Yes, I do. What is that? That is a ticket stub of the show that I went to see in California, Stockton. And is that also dated May 1st, 2015? It is, yes. The government offers 220, no objection. Okay. Ooh, this is becoming boring. Now, after the concerts, do you recall seeing the defendant that evening? I do, yes. And do you remember what hotel room looked like where you stayed? I'm sorry. Do you remember what your hotel room looked like where you were staying? Yes, I do. I remember that the room was a suite that had a fireplace in it. And what, if anything, do you recall happening? Did you see the defendant at the hotel room? I did, yes, in Stockton, California. I did, yes. What do you recall happening in the hotel room in Stockton, California? This was the first time that I had vaginal penetration with the defendant. And by vaginal penetration, what do you mean? We had sexual intercourse. What was the defendant's penis? Was the defendant's penis inside your vagina? Yes, it was. And prior, or what, if any, type of contraception did the defendant use to your knowledge? He used none. And what, if any, did the defendant tell you about any sexually transmitted diseases that he had? He never mentioned any of that nature to me. Now, how is it that you recall that? Now, how is it that you recall that was the first time that you had sexual intercourse with the defendant? I remember because the room that we were in, it had a kitchenette in it and it had a fireplace. And I had never been in a room that had a fireplace before in a suite. Do you recall what city you traveled to after Stockton, California? I believe I went to Los Angeles, and I'm showing the government exhibit 253A. Do you recognize 253A? I do. What is that? It is a my flight confirmation to Sacramento. And does it show? So I'm sorry. Can you say what the flight travel plans was there? Yeah, it was me departing and going to Los Angeles. Yes. So leaving Sacramento, California, and going to Las Vegas. Yes. And who arranged this travel for you? The defendant's assistant. Was that Cheryl Mack? Yes, it was. The government offers 253A and asks that it be published to the jury only, please. No objection. Okay, that's in evidence. So I still, unless I just kind of like skipped a page, or unless I just kind of zoned out and read it and not realizing that I read it, I still haven't seen the part where she reveals her age to R. Kelly, right? Um, Now, do you remember the hotel that you were staying in when you got to Las Vegas? Yes, I do. What hotel was that? I was staying in Mandalay Bay. And do you recall what you did the first evening on May 2nd, 2015? When you arrived in Las Vegas, yes, I did. I'm sorry. Yes, I did want. I wanted to go shopping and get food. And did you try to go shopping? I did. Yes. And what did you do? I believe I had text his assistant asking where the nearest mall was. And when you say his assistant, who are you referring to? Cheryl. And the defendant's assistants, yes. And how did the defendant's assistants respond to you when you asked for nearest mall? She asked me had I let him know that I was leaving my hotel room. And by letting him know, what him are you referring to? The defendant. How did you respond? I told her no, I hadn't. Do you recall how the defendant assistant responded when you said you had not told the defendant that you had planned to go shopping? I do not. All right. I want to start by showing you government exhibit 233I. Do you recognize 233I? Yes, I do. What is that? This is a text message that I sent to my mother on what date? May 3rd, 2015. And the government, of course, puts that into evidence. Can you read the text message that you sent to your mom? Yes, it says, everyone having fun, and Kel said, do not leave that room. Who's Kel? The defendant. Is that his nickname for the defendant? Yes. I'm showing, and what are you referring to when you said Kel said, do not leave that room? My hotel room, meaning I could not leave. And who told you you couldn't leave? The defendant. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as 233J. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked as 233G. Do you recognize 233G? Yes. What is shown in 233G? This is a conversation between me and his assistant, Cheryl, wanting to go to the mall. Is that conversation a moment ago? Yes, it is. The government offers read the text before 5837, right over here indicating. It says, trying to figure it out. Mr. Kelly, is Mr. Kelly okay with you going out of your room? Is it it's very hectic out there? Let's say, a response from Mrs. Mack? Yes. What does it say? She says, oh, okay. Yeah. Well, we will need to make sure it's okay. It's very, very hectic. I can't get a McDonald's to you. No problem. And when Mrs. Cheryl Mack wrote, we will need to make sure it's okay. What do you understand that to mean? she would have needed to make sure with the defendant before I could leave my room. Who, if anyone else, do you recall meeting you when you were in Las Vegas? I remember meeting a young woman who said, who, I'm sorry, I remember meeting a young woman who he said was a friend of his. Do you remember her nickname? Yes, Juice. Where did you meet Juice? I met Juice in Las Vegas. And do you remember Las Vegas? Yes, I believe he had told me to come down to the lobby, and that is when I initially met her. She was already down there. So, you know what? Let me just pause back right here with the whole hotel room thing, because, you know, you just basically heard her testify uh, saying that basically Cheryl was asking if it was okay if R. Kelly said it was okay for her to leave the room. Look, I didn't see any threats in there. I didn't see any conversation that basically, made her believe that, you know, she was going to be beat or punished if she left the room. Staying in the room was her choice. What I get out of that conversation or that line of text is simply this. It's simply that, you know, R. Kelly paid for the room. He's paying for her to basically be there. And what the assistant is trying to do is trying to make sure that there's not a situation where he ends up coming to see her and then she's not there. And, you know, he basically wastes his time by coming to a hotel room, which he paid for to see her, which, you know, he basically paid for a flight ticket for her to be there. And, you know, maybe he's skipping out of a concert or in between shows or something like that to come and see her, to, you know, to spend time with her or whatever. I don't see this as him being abusive. It's strictly her choice. She could have just said, forget it. If you give me a taxi or not, I'm finna go shopping. I'm finna go and do what I want to do. She could have just said that, right? Now, of course, if she does something like that, then more than likely, you know, R. Kelly probably would have been upset, but who cares, right? Or she risked probably losing a relationship, right? But again, that's her choice. Nobody forced her to do that, right? She decided to stay in a hotel room as her choice. Unless we're going to read something later down the line where he makes some type of threat towards her if she leaves the room. But right now, I just see her making a choice to stay. Let me know if you see something different. And then, hold on a second here. And then it goes on. I'm slightly distracted here. 1 second. Okay, so then it goes on. And then it goes on. Yes, I believe I was there. He told me to come down to the lobby. That is when I initially met her, and she was already down there. And what, if anything, did you and Juice do together when you met her? We went shopping. And do you recall what you did the night before you went shopping? Yes, we went to his show together. And who were you referring to when you say we there? And the defendant, I'm sorry, but who went to the show? I'm sorry, but who went to the show together? Me and Juice. And what, if anything, did Juice say to you when you went to the concert together? When she had come to knock on my door, she saw my outfit and she asked me if I really wanted to wear that and if I felt a need to change. And what did you understand her to be telling you? To change my wardrobe of what I had on. Did you understand what she would have preferred? I'm sorry. Did you understand what she would have preferred you to have worn, or what she can sustain? I am showing the witness what's been marked for identification exhibit 221. Do you recognize 221? Yes, I do. What is that? This is a ticket stub from his show in Las Vegas. Is that concert that you, is that the concert that you attended to with Juice? Yes, it is. The government offers 221, and they get that into the evidence. So Now you said that the following day you went to shopping with Juice. Do you recall where you went shopping? It was a mall in a hotel, so we didn't go far. And who, if anyone, did you see while you went shopping? We actually ended up meeting with the defendant while shopping. And what did you offer? And what did you after shopping? I then went back to my hotel room. Who, if anyone, was in a room when you went back there? Juice came back to my hotel room with me. And at some point, was there anyone else in your hotel room? Yes, the defendant then came hours later. And what happened when the defendant came to your hotel room? I had been texting him asking if Juice could leave because she was just sleeping and if she could go back to her own hotel room. And how did the defendant respond? He actually said that he wanted to come and he wanted to have sex. And what did you do? I told him I declined because Juice was still in the room, and I told him it was something I was not comfortable with. And so, where were you and the defendant in the room? We were on the side of the bed, and Juice was sitting on the on sitting. I'm sorry. We were on the side of the bed, and Juice was sitting a couch sleeping. I think this is supposed to be on the couch sleeping. And so, what happened next? He told me it wasn't a big deal, and what she was sleep and that she was asleep, and that it would basically be fast. What happened? And then we had vaginal intercourse. And what, if anything, did Juice do while you were engaged in sexual activity with the defendant? She had her back towards us, and she didn't do anything. What happened after that? After he had come, he said, I see, I told you. And then he called Juice's name and told her to go to her hotel room, and she left. And Juice then left the hotel room? Yes. And that trip to California that you just described, was that all while you were 17 years old? Yes, as well. I don't see where they explained where it was revealed to R. Kelly 10 years old. I must be missing this. While you were in your junior year in high school, where did you see him? Where in Florida? I saw him in Jacksonville. Why were you in Jacksonville? I was actually in Key West because I had a show that was not far from there. And by show, what do you mean? I had my own performance that I was doing for a breast cancer awareness. What did you do? So how did you end up meeting the defendant in Jacksonville? My show actually ended a lot earlier than I anticipated, and because he was in Jacksonville, I did want to surprise him and tell him how well my show went. Who, if anyone, were you with? I was with my mother. By the way, what, if anything, did the defendant ask you to do at your show? He told me to send pictures and videos of me performing. Mrs. Giddens, I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification in 233. And of course, they're going to get that in evidence. I'm just going to, hold on a second. Do you recognize 233M? Yes, I do. What is that? It is a conversation between me and my mother. And what are you talking about? I'm basically saying he wanted someone to record my show, and what he said, and he said, good luck. And when you say he, who are you referring to? The defendant. And what was the date of this conversation? May 8th, 2015. The government offers 233M. No objection. Excuse me. So I'm probably going to have to cut this short sometime soon because, man, this is long. No objection. That's in evidence. And may we publish it? Yes. Can you read the last text message at the bottom and the first let the jury know who wrote the text message? I wrote that text message, and it says, just asking how my day went, and he can't wait to see me, and good luck tonight. He wants someone to record it so I can send it to him and stuff like that. And again, who are you referring to in the text message? The defendant. You may have already said this, but who were you with when you were in Jacksonville initially? I was with my mother. And do you remember where in Jacksonville you and your mom went? I remember that he was staying at the Omni. Is that a hotel? Yes. What happened when you went to the Omni? Did you then go to the Omni? We did. What happened there? We got there after his show had ended, and I believe all the hotels were booked. up at that time, and he did see the defendant. And what, if any, communications did you have with the defendant's assistants that day? She expressed to us that all of the hotels were booked, and so she was going to give me and my mother her hotel room and book it at a further location. Mrs. Geddes, I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification 233N. Mrs. Geddes, do you recognize 233N? Yes, I do. What is that? It's a text message between me and Cheryl, his assistant. And what are the dates? What is the date of this communication, this conversation? May 8th, 2015. The government offers 233N. No objections. Okay, in evidence. Did you, in fact, get a hotel room that night in Jacksonville? We did, yes. How many hotel rooms did you and your mom get? I told his assistant that me and my mother only needed one room. How did the defendant's assistants respond? She responded by saying that she would get us multiple rooms. And where did you end up staying that night? I ended up staying in the defendant's hotel room. Do you recall what, if anything, happened between you and the defendant that evening? Yes, we were intimate. And by intimate, what do you mean? We had vaginal penetration. You testified earlier about the trip to Los Angeles, Stockton, California, Las Vegas. Did you travel again to see the defendant after that trip? I believe so, yes. How would you get to those locations? His assistants would book the entire itinerary, and and what type of travel was it? Flight. Who did you understand ultimately was paying for that travel? The defendant. Now, do you remember all of the dates and locations that you traveled to meet the defendant in the spring of 2015? I do not. All right. I want to direct your attention to May 15th, 2015. Do you recall where you traveled in or around that day? No, Mrs. Geddes, I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification 233S. She asks, what is 233S? Do you recognize it? It's a conversation between me and Cheryl. Is this his assistants? And what is the date of the conversation? May 15th. And then she puts that in evidence. Where were you arranging to, or where were you hoping to go on around May 15th, 2015? Yeah, he had told me to tell her to get me to Atlanta. And by he, who are you referring to? The defendant. And can you read the top text message? Mr. Kelly said to get me to Atlanta, Georgia on Monday. And then I wanted to direct your attention to May 21st of 2015. Do you recall where, if anywhere, you travel or in around that day? I do not. I'm showing you what's been marked as identification as government exhibit 233T. Do you recognize what's shown in 233T? Generally speaking, what are those? What is it? It is a text conversation between me, his assistants, and Cheryl. Hold on a second. Okay. Do you recognize what's shown in 233T? I do. Generally speaking, what are those? What is it? It's a text conversation between me and assistant Cheryl. And what is the date of that text message communication on May 20th, 2015? And what are you and Cheryl discussing in those text messages? That he had wanted me to get to San Diego. And by he, who are you referring to? The defendant. The government offers 233T. No objection. That's in evidence. 233T was received in evidence. All right, I'm feeling like I need to cut this off at some point. So at this point, we can see that Cheryl is basically responsible for, arranging these trips for Jane Doe, aka Azriel. At this point, we still have not seen R. Kelly being made aware that Azriel is actually 17 instead of 18. So that's what we have at this point. I'm going to read a little bit further, and then I'll probably cut this off to try to schedule some more of it later. But damn, this thing is long. I don't even know if I am going to get through this, right? But anyway, moving on. Can you just read for the jury the top of that text message? Mrs. Kelly said to get me to San Diego tomorrow morning. And who wrote that text message? I sent that text message to Cheryl Mack. I did, yes. Did Cheryl Mack then arrange travel for you to get to San Diego? Yes. What, if any, sexual contact did you have with the defendant during the trip in California? We have vaginal penetration. During that trip in California, what, if any, contraception did the defendant use? None. And prior to you having sexual contact with the defendant, what, if anything, did you tell about any sexual transmitted disease that he had? I'm sorry. And prior to you having sexual contact with the defendant, what, if anything, did he tell you about any sexually transmitted diseases that he had? He never expressed anything of that nature. You testified earlier that you were finishing or you were in your junior year of high school when you took those trips. Yes. When the school year ended, what, if anything, did you do for the summer? I was in Chicago with the defendant. And at that time, where was the defendant living? In Chicago. Now, you testified earlier about the telephone number that you got for the defendant on April 18, 2015. Was that the only telephone of his that you communicated with? No, he had multiple numbers. Do you recall the other telephone numbers that the defendant had? Sorry. I don't know them by heart. No. Do you know do you know how many other telephones the defendant had? Yes, he had four numbers. And initially he said that I would receive all of them when I earned his trust. Did you eventually receive those telephone numbers? Yes, I did. You said that you were with the defendant in Chicago. Where did you stay in Chicago that summer? In 2015, I would stay in hotels and I would stay at the studio on Ohio Street. Do you remember which hotels you stayed in? I stayed in, majority of them were downtown, the Intercontinental, the W, in downtown Chicago. Yes. You also mentioned that you stayed at the studio. What type of studio was that? It was a business and it was a studio. He had one room that had a master bedroom in it. And where was that studio located? It was located in a business office on the top floor. Do you recall the street that it was on? You have already said it, Ohio Street. And what was that? And was that downtown Chicago? It was, yes. Was there a bathroom inside the defendant's studio on the Ohio Street? There was not. If you wanted to use a bathroom, where would you go? I would have to get in touch with him before I could go to that one that was for the public. And where was that located? It was outside of the studio on the 6th floor. Now, was the defendant's studio also on the 6th floor? Yes. I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification as 505C, 505B, and as in boy, B as in boy. Do you recognize 505C? Yes, I do. What is that? This is the business office in which he had a studio on in one of his business suites. And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as 505B, as in B as in boy. And do you recognize that? Yes, that is the main interest. Mrs. Geddes, the government offers 50. Okay, she's putting that into evidence. Do you recall you said the defendant was on the 6th floor? Which floor is that in the building? So just on the 6th floor, when you go upstairs, his unit was to the right. It was the first right that you make. And was that the top floor? Yes, it was. Now, when you started spending time in the studio on Ohio Street, what, if any, rules did you learn that the defendant wanted you to follow while you were in the studio? I could not leave the room without calling him or an assistant and asking. And how did you learn that rule? He told me not to leave the room without calling him or getting in touch with his assistant. And I asked you earlier about where the bathroom was located. Yes. What if were you always able to get in touch with the defendant when you needed to use a bathroom? No. What would you do if you weren't able to get to? I'm sorry. What would you do if you weren't able to get in contact with the defendant? I had to urinate in the cup. Really? Where were the cups? They would get cups like extra large cups for the gas station. And in the master bedroom, there was tissue paper and baby wipes. Now, other than Chicago, where did you regularly see the defendant during the summer months after your junior year? Can you repeat the question? Yes, during the summer after your junior year, you testified that you would see the defendant in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Were there any other cities where you regularly saw the defendant that summer? Atlanta. And where in Atlanta would you see the defendant? I would see him in the hotels, and he had expressed to me that he had a home in Atlanta, Georgia. Did you go to the home in Atlanta, Georgia? I did, yes. I am showing the witness what's been marked for identification as government exhibit 506. Do you recognize 506? Yes, I do. What is that? This is the big house in Atlanta. And when you say the big house, what were you referring to? That's just the defendants. That's what the defendants call it. It's the defendant's home that you just mentioned. Yes, it is. The government offers 506, and they put that in evidence. And I'm now showing what's been marked for identification as 504. Do you recognize government exhibit 504? Yes, I do. What is that? This is the guest house. And what is a guest house? At this time, this is where the other women whom were in a relationship with live. All right. This is the first time they mention another woman being in a relationship with R. Kelly. So it's funny at this time, this is where the women whom he were in a relationship with. It's funny how this now just comes out. I mean, I know they talked about another woman, but I'm not sure if it's the same woman that was in a room with her when she was trying to sleep. This is odd because it just kind of comes out right here now. Anyway, all right. Where is the guest house located? What city? It's also in Atlanta, Georgia. It's about 15 minutes from the big house. And have you been to the guest house? I have, yes. The government offers 504. Any objections? None. That's in evidence. Now you have visited defendant in Atlanta over the summer of 2015. Where do you remember staying? I would stay in hotels. I would stay in the big house, and I would stay in the guest house. All right. And the big house and the guest house, are those houses that were just shown? Yes. Initially, the defendant was on tour and you were traveling with him. How would you travel? By flight. And would you attend each of the defendant's concerts you were present for? I would, yes. And you know what, guys? I am going to break this off right here. I think we're on page 844. It's just kind of getting dry and long right now. And I understand what they're trying to do. The prosecution is trying to establish a few things. In my opinion, they're trying to establish that R. Kelly knew she was underage, but so far they haven't done a really good job at that. So far from reading this, R. Kelly isn't aware of her age. They're also trying to establish that Cheryl Mack was working for R. Kelly and Cheryl Mack knew of Azriel's age, but that doesn't mean R. Kelly knew. And they're also trying to establish the fact that Cheryl Mack arranged all of the trips for Azriel, right? And they are trying to do this to basically substantiate the RICO charge, trying to say that R. Kelly, his organization, was responsible for transporting young women, underage girls around. But, this kind of fails because, again, R. Kelly doesn't know her age at this point. And second, most importantly, it fails because even though Cheryl Mack is arranging trips for his girlfriends, one being Azrielclary or Jane, that doesn't make it a criminal enterprise. Basically, Cheryl Mack, in my opinion, as it appears here, is responsible for arranging the particulars of his dates, right? And I made this argument before, just because she's arranging his dates doesn't mean it's a criminal enterprise. It just means what it is. She's basically arranging his dates. Now, R. Kelly himself wouldn't have time to do all this because he's touring and he's off making money. So he's basically hired a personal assistant to basically handle this. There would be no different if you was a business entrepreneur and you had a business making tons of money and you wanted to date, but you didn't have time to basically handle the logistics of your date, and you hired a personal assistant to basically arrange all that stuff. So far, all of the government's efforts have failed up until this point, If you disagree with me, leave your questions and comments in the chat or below. Yeah, so this is just kind of crazy, and this shouldn't even be in court. So I'm just going to go ahead and end this live stream right here, and I'll see if I'm going to pick this up and continue, because I haven't really seen anything um, damning from the government's perspective, right? I haven't seen the government present anything damning. I may, when I come back, because like I said, I'm not sure if I want to continue, but I may try to, if I come back, I may skip directly to the part of the cross-examination to see how the defense handles this, or I may not come back at all. We'll see what I do. I'm going to think about this a little bit, because this thing is really long, and I'm not sure if it's actually worth reading all of this. If you kind of like me reading this stuff, let me know, comments below, and maybe I'll continue, maybe I won't. That's it for now. We're on page 844. I don't know if I'm going to continue, but if I do continue, I'll let you know. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.